Thank you, Izzy and Evan, over on the desk. As you said just now, I am joined by my fellow co-caster for a long while now, Hayden. So, how are you doing, Hayden? Are you looking forward to these matches? Because I sure am, given the stakes we have going forward for this week.
Yeah, I think we have some wonderful matches to showcase. I'm excited to be on the Sootopolis City League and once again casting with you, Kana. I think we're in for a treat today, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, it's very exciting to see. You know, we had to go Gahaku crowned as our MVP, which congratulations to them again. It's always nice to be crowned MVP of the league, especially when you get a cash incentive. But another incentive that was as well was pushing their team a little bit closer to that pretty much whitewash of a win. And if we can see it go further, it's gonna be on YoshiAndLugia's hands to kind of say, hold up, gonna make that a 6-1, and then there can only be a 7-1 or maybe a 6-2. But other than that, you know, we're going to have that strength, that storyline from the Thunders is to say, we're going to take that full 8-0. If they can do that, that'd be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, Tokyo in so many ways here is just being shown to be an incredible contender here. 6-0 so far, possibly 7-0, possibly 6-1 after this next result. Wonderful match record going into this, and some brilliant players, as you mentioned. Gohaku winning that $100 prize for MVP, and a lot of other really strong players here. So Fiona is sort of all that's standing in the way, and then one other player between Tokyo getting that 8-0, and I'm sure the Tokyo Thunders would love to do that. I'm sure Fiona would love to be able to stop them and have that little point of pride of like, yes, this is an amazing team, but they couldn't beat me.
Yeah, that would be amazing to be that last little roadblock in the league. But we can also say, you know, will that be a bit of a shake-up given what the players we see here? Because YoshiAndLugia has had that position where they had a cheaper price than YMM their opponents has had, but also has a better record. And if we look at their results all around in terms of overall VGC, we see that she has a bit of a history to her, whereas YMM has started to come out of their shell in these recent tournaments with a lot of, you know, off topic, you know, like grassroots leagues across Asia and just online, like APAC, Taiwan League, and also the Little Root Draft League, which is similar to this league and has about 100 plus teams, so not really shy to this style of tournament.
Yeah, so YMM super accomplished in some of those grassroots tournaments. Fiona as well, the Hatterene Series 1 champion, so definitely accomplished in grassroots settings, but also has a lot of experience in the live VGC events. 3 times world competitor, has attended a number of regionals and done pretty well to be able to get those invites. And the PGL2 champion, another grassroots league with the High Dragons in both Series 9 and Series 10. Or I think that the format was both of those. So definitely, as you mentioned, Fiona went for a lower draft price, but she's definitely a super accomplished player and definitely knows what she's doing to be able to handle this. YMM does have the momentum of a team who has set him up just so well to be jumping into this with like low pressure, but still the ability to win and get that extra step up for the Tokyo Thunders.
Yeah, it'd be great to get that extra step up. And even looking at the teams, we can see really what has caused them to have that step up in terms of level of play. Fiona bringing something close to what is normally the orthodox in the Rillaboom plus Urshifu plus Incineroar core. Then you have like water types, electric types, really anything that stops that core. And then something that I'm quite fond of has come back in this format, the Naga Nardel, which could be a bit of an issue for the Pokemon we see on YMM's team. Yes, there is the Cresselia, which has that psychic typing, which is super effective against it, but Cresselia is normally known to be a bulkier Pokemon, so it could be a battle of the wits, a battle of bulk versus strength, as I do see a very strong team going against a very bulkier team in terms of the back and forth we have here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to see Cresselia again finally after so many Dynamax formats where it really struggled to be as effective. But yes, as you mentioned, unless it's a really offensive Cresselia, this Naganadel might not be immediately threatened by it and is in turn threatening so much. So I think that offense versus some more defensive pivots is a really good way of framing this match. And I'm excited to see what YMM comes up with for slowing down that Naganadel or getting that KO a little bit quicker than we think it will happen.
As to see what they do bring in this starting lineup. Of course, it'll be, you know, again, it's going to be that pace is going to be the setter really for this game. Will it be a slow paced game from YMM side? It will be a speedier game from Fiona's side, as we do see the super fast Regieleki against everyone's favorite little kitty cat in VGC, the Incineroar, and next to it is the Rillaboom and a nice shiny bee-like Naganadel, which, you know, has the special attack that do a lot of damage to both these Pokemon and isn't really affected by Intimidate, And we already know the faster fake out is likely on that Rillaboom, so the pace has pretty much been set straight away by Fiona, but will that pace be exploited and executed in the way that allows her to have that front foot over YMM, where YMM has the more fragile and faster Pokemon in terms of that Regieleki?
Yeah, absolutely. So YMM has that speed advantage, and there's maybe something he can do here. But as you mentioned, that faster fake out, Fiona getting to choose which of the two Pokemon doesn't move, and then having this Naganadel in position to be able to do damage to either side. That Regieleki is just protecting, so there's no threat on that Naganadel yet.
Yeah, the Protect just getting called out very well, and the Fake Out going into the Incineroar, and the Sludge Bomb going into the Incineroar, so loads of damage down onto the Incineroar. Procs it down to its berry, showing that, revealing what it has straight away, and showing that it has enough bulk to take this combination of attacks, and not be overly worried when it comes to this in game 2, or maybe just later throughout this game. Grassy Terrain Recovery is going to be a bit of an extra as well, meaning it's going to stay around longer, and cause the Pokemon to maybe double up into it again to get a knockout. If not, the Protect is burned on the Regieleki, and U-turn could be an option to just recycle the Rillaboom and just start getting the damage out on the Regieleki, where Incineroar can't really touch the Naganadel because it's Dragon type, and Parting Shot is going to go after it attacks, most likely given its speed tier. So something that could be influential in this flow to play.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that turn went as well as it could have gone for Fiona, but then that Incineroar having so much bulk against that Sludge Bomb, definitely tough that Fiona hasn't gained very much just yet. I think it's more on her to make use of the fact that this Incineroar is a little bit lower, that Regieleki has burned its Protect, as you mentioned, and trying to be able to do something, but that Naganadel is going to be slowed down before it's able to do anything with that Electro Web.
Yeah, Naganadel has been slowed down by Electro, which could be a bit of a passage for the Incineroar to be faster. As we see, it's not enough. The Sludge Bomb comes straight out and just goes down to the Sash on a Regieleki. So again, revealing the item, revealing the sort of playstyle YMM is going for. Of that, I can be strong, but I can also be bulky. As the Flare Blitz comes out onto the Rillaboom and gets the knockout. Not really something you'll often think of, because Incineroar doesn't often put its physical attack into consideration when having its EVs, but maybe this one has a little bit of bulk, or that's offense, sorry, or the Rillaboom was a little bit less bulkier than we normally see, maybe going for outright offense, meaning it did drop, and meaning that YMM has that advantage in the Pokemon. And with that speed advantage as well, with Electro Web going off on that turn too, and the Focus Sash keeping the Regieleki alive, means you can keep going for this Electro Web. So we see it's a Dark type Urshifu, so it's not going to be super effective damage from the Electro Webs onto it, but it's still going to be enough to slow it down, and maybe allow Incineroar to start picking up some knockouts where it needs it, or maybe Parting Shots, or whatever it needs to do to weaken these Pokemon and slow them down, whether it be with their pace or just their outright damage output.
Yeah, a really nice way to use the fact that Electro Web isn't just targeting down that Naganadel and slowing it down, it also keeps that Rillaboom from moving, and then that Flare Blitz getting that KO. This Incineroar is putting in a lot of work, and Fiona hasn't yet shown us what her plan is for getting rid of it quickly. That Fake Out Sludge Bomb was so good on turn 1, but now it's still around, it's still taking KOs, and that Regieleki is around too. I think what you mentioned before, Kana, that all of these Pokemon are putting down a lot of offense, but also really difficult to KO, is a really nice balance that we're seeing from YMM. And it's going to be on Fiona to try to figure out how to leverage her very offensive Pokemon to be able to counteract that.
Yeah, Fiona has to try and counteract as quick as possible as we see the Protect, but not going to matter for this the Urshifu. It does go straight for that Protect, an ability that some people aren't overly fond of in VGC, so luckily we're going to Scarlet and Violet soon, and it does get that chance to switch out into the Suicune, which, given that Regieleki is now gone, unless Rillaboom is in the back, it can sit there fine and dandy and just set up its Tailwind if it has it, go for some Icy Winds if that speed control. Scald might do a lot to Incineroar if it doesn't get knocked out by the Sludge Bomb, as it does, giving Naganadel its first Beast Boost of the game, and even though it's a neg 1 speed, it could have a little bit of bulk in it, maybe somewhere down the line, just to means like, hey, I'm gonna get these Beast Boosts, I have a high special attack stat, and just start getting that ball rolling, the snowball as some may want to call it, and giving Fiona that extra bit of strength going forward, where these Pokemon are often bulkier and might be naturally slower, even with that -1 speed stat.
Just a wonderful call of Fiona getting that mind game correct with like the Sucker Punch versus the U-turn into the Protect, and Urshifu finally being able to do what Rillaboom couldn't, and U-turn and get the KO on that Regieleki. And yes, as you mentioned, this Suicune's in such a phenomenal position now to be able to try to set up that Tailwind. It does have to deal with that Rillaboom in the meantime, and then this Naganadel is going to have to figure out a way to navigate the fact that it can do damage, but one of the Pokemon on YMM side that can do a lot of damage in return is that Sylveon. If it's not KO'd by a Sludge Bomb immediately, it's definitely a threat. And so Fiona's gonna have to find a way to navigate that. This Naganadel is clearly like a key to victory here, but you have to find a way to be able to do enough damage before that Sylveon tries to maybe get a KO in return.
Yeah, it's got to find out where it can go, because Fiona was in that situation where it's like, if I knock out the Rillaboom, the Sylveon could start doing big damage. If I knock out the Sylveon, the Rillaboom can knock out my Suicune. But of course, in terms of what Fiona has in the back, that Urshifu is going to really appreciate that Sylveon being gone, but that Protect was abused so carefully there with the Carmine going off, meaning that that +1 that you had on the Naganadel, that's pretty much gone. And Sylveon being naturally very bulky already, and already having a very high special attack stat as well, is going to be setting a lot of pace and to be having a lot of fun trying to go forth and try and get those knockouts, but get the damage off. We do see Snarl is on this Suicune though, so it is going to be reducing the special attack stat if it goes for it, but it also isn't reducing that special defense stat, which is what Naganadel wants to be breaking through. I have to see if that bulk is enough compared to that +1 to allow it to live and just start getting those attacks down. The Hyper Voice is very, very strong from Sylveon when it gets it going.
Yeah, just a wonderful Calm Mind there. We are going to see the Grassy Glide coming out, getting that chip onto the Naganadel. Sludge Bomb coming out, how much will it do to the Sylveon? It is almost enough. It's going to be really close whether the Scald picks up the KO. If it does, that's probably game for Fiona. If it doesn't, the Sylveon's amazing, but it is the KO. So setting up that Calm Mind was wonderful, but with the ability to just double target through that, unfortunately Sylveon could not last the whole game to get that Hyper Voice off, and now it is just that Rillaboom facing down. Dragon Poison type, which is not Rillaboom's favorite mode of operation.
Yeah, it's not going to like this end game one bit. It can probably knock out the Suicune, if not do a large chunk to it, but is that anything when you just have Naganadel facing it down? As we do see, YMM does just go for that forfeit, meaning that Fiona is one step closer to stopping that outright defeat of the 8-0, meaning that, you know, we could just see them set that pace a bit. Yes, unfortunately, they're already out of the league, but having that little bit of righteous glory at the end to say, hey, we stopped the team from completely destroying us, could be that little bit of buff to go through this game 2 and just make it a 2-0.
Yeah, I think absolutely. It's nice to improve your own player record. It's nice to show that for your team to stop this like storm of the Tokyo Thunder. I think also a lot of the point of draft leagues is additionally to get good practice in. And so it's awesome to see both players taking this super seriously and trying to figure out who's going to be able to win if Tokyo Thunder can steamroll or if Fiona can stop. But I think going into the matchups here, it's definitely... You brought it up before that the Naganadel is going to be a huge deal. We still haven't seen an option yet, I don't believe, from YMM for how to get rid of it. They were sort of handling the other Pokemon, trying to slow it down a little bit with that Regieleki. Setting up that Calm Mind was an awesome approach with Sylveon, but especially with those Beast Boosts, it was just the Naganadel got going a little bit too fast for that Sylveon to slow it down. So I'm interested in seeing what YMM does to adapt.
Yeah, YMM can maybe adapt around that, maybe getting the Sylveon set up a little bit quicker, maybe wait for Naganadel to be gone and do it with a slow mode. It's just one of those Pokemon where it just sits there. Like, naturally you think, oh, it's a Dragon type, I can get rid of it with my Fairy type moves, but at the same time, it's Poison type as well, and it's just going to start throwing Sludge Bombs out, and even though you're getting your Calm Minds up, that is a turn you're wasting where you can just get doubled up into. The Rillaboom does put a bit of a scare on that as having the recycling of Fake Outs, but then if you come onto an odd Fake Out turn, then it's just going to give you the ability to just get that Sludge Bomb off, get a double up off, and Sylveon is back at square one where it's either got too little health to do anything, or it's just knocked out and you're forced into something like your Incineroar, which can take the hits, but what can it do in return? So YMM is going to have to think very heavily about what can be done and why they do it, see if they can overtake Fiona, and just maybe put a bit of pressure on for this game 2, get it down to a game 3, and just have that little bit of a push to be like, hey, my team got the 8-0, or at least go on to the 7-0, and just reduce that buffer even further, because that could be everything going in to these next rounds, whether that just be the intimidating factor, or just the overall, you know, just saying, hey, we've got that nice bit of morale behind us because we went 8-0 or 7-1. So we do see a nice lead change up with the Rillaboom and Naganadel in front of Cresselia, which can do a dent into this Naganadel if it is invested enough, and everyone's favorite again, Incineroar.
Yep, Incineroar coming out, it was sort of the thing that survived the best against this Naganadel in the past. That Cresselia actually activating a Grassy Seed, a really interesting item choice, and the Intimidate coming off, lowering that Rillaboom's attack. So I think we mentioned that the challenge for YMM is what can he do to stop this Naganata, and leading with that Cresselia the best option. And so there's a big question of if it can do enough damage quickly enough, or if it's maybe just going to get hit with that fake out, slowing it down for a little bit. I suppose we're just trading fake outs this first turn, but I'm interested in seeing what this Cresselia can do after that.
Yeah, chaining the fake outs was just a very safe option. It stops Fiona from taking too much damage from that Cresselia, and it stops YMM from getting that Naganadel getting its rolling as quick as possible. On tiles of paper, it couldn't have done much damage to anything on the field. We see a protect just to stop it from being thwarted anymore. New turn onto Cresselia, it doesn't do very much for a super effective attack, just showing how bulky YMM's Cresselia likely is, or just how little invested in attack we have on Fiona's Rillaboom. It will be hard to tell until we find out what damage goes into it later on, but knowing that it's going to take those hits is going to put a bit of pressure on Fiona, because she's going to be like, okay, can I maybe do damage off as quick as possible to get it gone? Will it take over me? Will it start using maybe like side shocks or sidekicks, or maybe even ice beams if it's powerful enough to get rid of the Naganadel? Naganadel can be made somewhat bulky, but not the bulkiest. Let's see what happens as Incineroar comes in, gets that Intimidate down onto one of these Pokemon, doesn't really mind about that. The Icy Wind comes out, goes into that Protect, and means there's not going to be any pace setters straight away. Naganadel still going to be as fast as it possibly can be. Incineroar being made slower on Fiona's side, which can be a bit of an annoyance if we do see maybe a Throat Chop go into it to stop any parting shots. Means it has to manually switch later on down the line.
An amazing critical hit Flare Blitz from that Incineroar, taking a good third out of Fiona's Incineroar. Pretty important given the Pokemon that YMM has on the field not really having options for doing damage right away. And a really nice call from Fiona there. We saw her hovering over whether she sent in Incineroar or the other dark type, the Urshifu, to try to handle this Cresselia. And if that Urshifu had come in and taken a critical hit Flare Blitz, that would not have been good for Fiona. Whereas now, Fiona just like playing to the fake out turns that you can to make sure that this Naganadel can still attack sometimes, even if it's a bit worried about what that Cresselia will do to it in return. As long as you attack on the turns that Cresselia flinches, you're just fine. So some nice strategy from Fiona here with the fake outs.
Yeah, Fiona just getting that fake out off on the loop, and then the slide from off onto Incineroar, doing a large chunk and getting the poison is absolutely, I guess it's not overly amazing because it means the berry is going to proc straight away, but it does mean it's gone, and the damage put onto it and the timer as well with that poison means that it's going to be a bit scared going for the rest of the game. Parting Shot allows it to switch out so that poison isn't going to be ticking up with as much damage as it was before, just going to be its poison tick later on in the game. But it also means you could get that little bit of stat reduction down onto the Naganadel, which means it's doing less damage to the Cresselia. I mean, the Cresselia can take it out a little bit quicker. It means it's going to be, it's not slower, sorry, because it didn't get hit by the Icy Wind, but it's still dampened in a way. And with Rillaboom coming in, it could just fake it out. Cresselia can go for a side shock or side kick. Yes, it can protect, but that is a turn wasted going for that protect. Then Cresselia can maybe set up a Trick Room, or could go for something else just to set the pace again, or just maybe go for a wild move that calls any switches that Fiona could go for. It is a plethora of different options that could come out, and we do see Taunt is on the Incineroar here for Fiona, so if maybe we call some sort of Trick Room, that'd be amazing. If not, it's still at the end of the world. Pokemon is still kind of even in terms of their presence on the field. As Rillaboom comes in, we'll soak up a few of those attacks that come out. Fake Out goes into the Incineroar though, so not wasted overly, and the Calm Mind revealed on Cresselia as well, meaning it's just going to get its stats buffed, and it's going to do exactly what that Sylveon tried to do last game, just with a bit of a better type coverage in terms of what we can see on Fiona's side.
Very interesting to see the double Calm Mind Pokemon on YMM side as potential answers to that Naganadel. That Cresselia, especially with the Grassy Seed and everything, just set up so wonderfully to be able to build up that bulk over time. It's very interesting. Fiona and YMM are trading turns of momentum with these fake outs, and so now Fiona has it, and I'm curious what she'll be able to do. But YMM getting that Calm Mind, such a huge deal here. We're going to see the Icy Wind come out, maybe not quite so much damage, but as we go, unless there's a quick way to slow down this Cresselia, things are going to be really tough really quickly for Fiona.
Yeah, it's going to be super tough with these speed drops and these stat boosts happening all around. Of course, the Parting Shot goes out, means that it's weakened a little bit, that it's now at +1 defense only, but really, is that going to be a big problem for YMM, because we already know that, you know, the special attacking moves are the things that it's going to be threatened by from this Naganadel, and it's probably, you know, it's going to be super scared of this Urshifu actually. So it's going to have to think, okay, I can either risk my special defense boost, which would be great for like Naganadel, to avoid being likely knocked out from this Urshifu, or just brave the Urshifu and hope for the best. Fake out can't be used, it has already been used up, so it can't go for that. So I have to see what options are really pushed onto this Cresselia. A great switch in there by Fiona, I must say, just putting pressure on both these Pokemon straight up, well, not straight away, but as quick as possible. So we have to see how YMM adapts to this.
Yeah, Fiona has that one answer she knows that she has to this Cresselia being a really big threat to the Naganadel, and that is the Urshifu, and doing that parting shot less to get that special attack drop and more to get a really safe switch in was really nice play. And we're going to see that Cresselia is dropping all of its boosts and switching out to go into that Sylveon, because the Cresselia is so important and so clearly threatened by that Urshifu.
Yeah, it's threatened by Urshifu, and that is what Urshifu does in these formats. Without Dynamax, those critical hits, whether that be with or without a choice band or any other damage buffing item, is going to be a lot of damage. And being a fairy type, if it goes into it, Sylveon will take this hit quite well. If not quite well, it takes a lot from that with the critical hit. So that is another timer put down of, you can 2-hit KO with the Urshifu. Sylveon's not outspeeding. Cresselia can't do much damage unless it goes to that Icy Wind, so that does put a kind of a 50-50 on it. Either you knock out the Cresselia, but then you can get knocked out by the Sylveon, or you can knock out whatever, or you can knock out the Sylveon and the Cresselia gets a bust. It is Incineroar coming in though, but Wicked Blow does not mind those attack drops. It's going to be critical hitting. It's going to be buffed with that choice band. We see the healing coming onto that Sylveon from the leftovers, but will it be enough to give it a sliver to live for his next turns? You have to see, because now that pressure is put on as well by the Incineroar, because it can just fake out, and then we just see a Hyper Voice come from the Sylveon. That is going to be a nice bit of damage going down. Most likely a knockout on the Urshifu being 4 times weak. But, you know, we have to call, will there be a switch? Will there be a protect? We may not know the choice band there from YMM side. So a lot of different calculations both players will go through as we see a switch out, just to consider that information from Fiona.
Yeah, absolutely. So much pressure there, just from getting that Sylveon back in and not quite getting that KO from the Wicked Blow. But Fiona really anticipating that, getting her own fake out in. But we see YMM's Incineroar is faster, so it's able to get that fake out off, stop the Incineroar from taking out Sylveon, and suddenly this Hyper Voice is going out with that critical hit especially. Going to just proc a berry on the Incineroar, but getting a nice chunk of damage off on a lot of Fiona's tools that she's going to need for maneuvering these fake outs to slow down that Cresselia. So a really nice turn from YMM. These players really are trading momentum back and forth so much. And I think the question is, now that Fiona's gone back to this sort of intermediary position with the fake out pressure and a lot of switching moves, if she's going to be able to set herself up well for that next turn, or if she's still going to struggle with the Sylveon for a little bit longer.
Yeah, she's going to have to find a way to kind of prevent that struggle. As you said, all the tools that are there to kind of have those switches are being whittled down, and there's only so much time that she can switch them or keep them on the field or try and risk the high risk, high reward switches and bulks, that, you know, that's going to come to an end, and we force a situation where Sylveon can likely get a knockout. We know Urshifu can maybe 2-hit KO it. It has got a bit of health back from that last hit, so it is forced. It's a situation where it has to go for those 2-hit KOs. If there's an Oko from a high roll, that'd be absolutely amazing, but what YMM probably has the ability to know that calculation, just sit there and go for the knockout straight after that. So I have to see what Fiona really calculates. Parting shot isn't going to do much for helping the damage roll, because it's just going to be 4 times effective. Fake out onto Incineroar stops any more parting shots, any more switches. As you see a parting shot going into that Incineroar, maybe covering a throat chop, maybe covering a taunt. We know it is faster, whether that could have been a speed tie or not, we don't know. As now we are seeing a nice parting shot, but it is forcing Fiona into blunt 2 of these Pokemon which aren't really liking being hit by the Sylveon, especially if it can get that boost 2 hits special attack and special defense, given it is Naganadel that was the choice to come in.
Whoa, a substitute coming out from Sylveon. That totally changes things. It is no longer threatened by this Naganadel, and it's going to be able to leftovers and grassy terrain recover a whole bunch of that health back up. That's a really interesting move from that Sylveon.
It is a really interesting move, and seeing a reaction that caught me off guard as well, because I saw a status animation. I was like, oh, probably going for Protect or Calm, and I was like, substitute? that's something that see every day on a Sylveon, because like you said, it gives it the allowance to get the boost, the health boost from the grassy terrain, from its leftovers, and it's going to take another hit likely from the sludge bomb. So if it goes for Calm Mind, it's going to have a pretty much free Calm Mind, and it can start going for more substitutes, getting its health back, having the time tick over, or just start going for Hyper Voices from there on out. Incineroar being on such low HP, it can't keep pivoting because Poison's going to get it at some point, or a double up, or anything really. A breeze of wind could likely push it over. So Fiona now has to consider, do they go for the Incineroar to make sure it can't keep switching, or do they go for the Sylveon and make sure that substitute is gone and stop the bulk from ticking up and up on those rolls? So a lot of pressure put on straight away from YMM just from that attack. We see a Protect, I believe, coming out from the Sylveon, given the speed, and there it is. So even more healing on that slot. And if we see a double up, then it's going to absorb those hits nicely. One hit goes into the Sylveon, and then sadly the other does go into the Incineroar, meaning that YMM loses a Pokemon. Fiona is now Pokemon up, but is that going to be the worst thing in the world with that substitute still sitting there, even with that Beast Boost going onto the Naganadel?
So nicely navigated from Fiona to not double target into that Sylveon. I think the temptation is like you have that threat on that Sylveon, but then YMM has that Protect option as well, and there was this really tough mind game from both sides of like, will Fiona double into the Sylveon, and does that Sylveon need to Protect, or is it Substitute going to keep it safe for a little bit longer to put that pressure out? And Fiona sort of correctly calling that she didn't need to double target it this turn, maybe even willing to take that Hyper Voice, and getting that KO and the Beast Boost as well makes this Naganadel very threatening, especially because that Sylveon hasn't gotten any special attack boosts yet, so it might not be able to KO that Naganadel outright just yet.
Yeah, it's not going to put enough pressure on Naganadel to really scare it, but as you said, over time it can get those boosts, it can get those stat improvements to grab that knockout. And we'll have to see if it has the time to go for it. Both Pokemon can just start doubling into it. Rillaboom isn't going to like a +1 Naganadel. So if anything, Fiona can just work around it. There's the kind of double-edged sword attack. If you work around the Sylveon, it gets its boost up from the Calm Minds. But if you do work around it, it's just a Sylveon sat there by itself, and we can see the damage is being exerted onto it. Protect coming out from Naganadel, just trying to cover up any fake outs. We do see it does go out onto the opposing Rillaboom though, so an amazing call there by YMM, allowing for a Calm Mind to go off, and this is an even bulkier Sylveon, so it's going to be a back and forth like a game of air hockey with these Calm Mind boosts to these Beast Boost boosts, and it's going to be a fun thing to get through there, and I'm going to see how much alliteration I can get into one game there.
Yeah, absolutely. The B Naganado's Beast Boost even. A lot happening here. I think a wonderful call from YMM to get that Calm Mind up. You could see Fiona trying to figure out, should Naganadel attack this turn, should it Protect, and getting that call wrong and having that fake out go out into the Rillaboom definitely puts YMM in a really nice position. This Hyper Voice is now a very clearly threatened KO on a lot of Pokemon, or at least a whole lot of damage. And that Sylveon still has the option to Protect, so Fiona still has that risk of, if I want to get rid of the Sylveon, I would have to double target it. But if I double target it and it Protects, then this Rillaboom is just having free turns to do a whole lot of other stuff, and I do not want to let myself get into a situation with like a Cresselia next to a Sylveon, everything that threatens the Naganadel, and that Sylveon threatens pretty much everything else on Fiona's side, so she doesn't have the same tools anymore for handling that Cresselia if it's out there. Just a lot of options from YMM, and it's up to Fiona to find a way out of a really tough spot here.
Yeah, it's up to YMM to kind of navigate the situation, but as you said, Fiona is also navigating the same sort of tough situation with the double ups, with any possible damage going through. Luckily, the Rillaboom is the target, and just a clean knockout, meaning it's going to get another Beast Boost, so it's technically ahead on those boosts in front of the Sylveon, but Sylveon can just go for another Calm Mind. I do believe we will be seeing it as the Hyper Voice is actually, so is that +1 enough to do enough damage? It gets a knockout on the Naganadel. No, and it was a critical hit, so getting that damage off just as much as it needed to remove the Naganadel, and YMM is now in a comfy position. Incineroar, yes, it can go for its moves like Flare Blitz and stuff. It can get some stat drops down, get some damage down onto this substitute Sylveon, but given the low HP it has and Grassy Terrain is ending this turn, is gonna not be sitting there for too long. And YMM, probably rubbing their hands, chuckling with joy, just thinking, hey, Afghan got a nice little knockout, which has pretty much swayed the tides of the entire game from losing one Pokemon.
Yeah, absolutely. The game really has revolved around this Naganadel, especially not just as a Pokemon that's threatening to a lot of YMM side, but also as the only clean Sylveon answer that Fiona's brought. The Rillaboom definitely has some options as well, but losing that Naganadel, whether that critical hit mattered or not, definitely puts Fiona in this really tough spot here. And I'm very curious to see what she has to maybe try to handle the Sylveon versus the Sylveon might be positioned to really just keep taking KOs. It has full health, a substitute, a calm mind boost, and hyper voice, which is unresisted by anything on Fiona's side of the field. Fiona should be able to get rid of that Cresselia with the Urshifu, but after that, it's definitely a question of, can you slow down the Sylveon, or will we be seeing a Game 3?
I think it'll be a game 3. I don't want to put any curses on it because us casters often do that when we're saying what we want from a game. But you got it on the head of the nail pretty much. Cresselia can go down to Urshifu. Sylveon can take a couple hits from either of these Pokemon given its substitute, and it's 4 times effective on the Urshifu in the low HP of the Incineroar. Means it's just going to obliterate them when it gets a chance to attack. If it feels quite safe enough and YMM feels greedy, maybe they can go for a Calm Mind, but I don't think they're in a state that can do that. Cresselia does go down with a critical hit guaranteed. I always catch that off guard with Urshifu. I'm like, oh, a critical hit. It's like, oh, it's guaranteed. As you see, the Flare Blitz will come out onto the substitute. Will it fade the substitute? It takes the damage. It does fade, unfortunately, but oh well, we're getting all this damage down, a little bit of help from the Incineroar itself by going for that Flare Blitz recoil and a double knockout. Sylveon becoming the MVP of this match for me just from this Game 2 presence, and all that's in its way is a Rillaboom, and what's it going to do? Fake it out, get a Grassy Glide off. Sylveon's bulky, it can take those hits, it can just go for its own Calm Mind boost and just start getting that damage rolling again, and Rillaboom's Assault Vest will be nothing in front of it.
Yeah, I think the one remaining question is Fiona being able to leverage the fact that her Incineroar is faster than the Sylveon and getting that Flare Blitz off to break the substitute. If this Rillaboom can do a lot of damage with that Wood Hammer, we do know that Sylveon tends to be more especially bulky than physically bulky. If it can maybe get a critical hit or just get enough damage off with the Grassy Terrain boost and the same type attack bonus, it does have a chance to go Fake Out into Wood Hammer. And I think that's Fiona's last hope, most likely, either surviving the Hyper Voice or being able to get a KO with that Wood Hammer. And looking at that Fake Out damage, it definitely looks like that might be possible. So we'll have to see how these damage rolls play out here.
It could be possible, and it could come down to the wire. Of course, we have seen the Fake Out does put it to nearly full HP with the effect of Grassy Terrain, but will it be enough to put the pressure on later down the line? As we see, Grassy Glide comes out, does about 50%, so maybe hoping on just trying to read speed tiers and hoping for the best possible outcome. Rillaboom happily and comfortably lives that Hyper Voice, but will Grassy Glide be enough? Will Fiona risk being slower with that Wood Hammer? Will Wood Hammer be enough? There are so many what ifs. It's like an episode of a Marvel show. We'll have to find out what happens, as Wood Hammer is the option of Fiona and this could clean up the game. Sylveon protects, gets that bit more recovery, so even more time going down. Both these players have been giving that timer warning, obviously, from the game. Both of them probably thinking, oh, just play out to time. Sylveon has been known to do that in the past and likely can do it again. As you see, the Grassy Terrain covering, the leftovers are covering. We're going to say we're covering a lot, I think, Hayden, in these last couple turns, possibly relying on double, triple, quadruple, everything protects. It is going to be a show worth watching, guys, over on the stream.
So we're seeing Sylveon gambling on surviving the Wood Hammer, not going for the next protect. Can it? Ooh, and that's the KO. So a tough call from YMM. Was that a damage roll? Probably. And if you're able to survive that, then you win. But if you had gotten that double protect, that also would have given you a more comfortable survival. So tough call from YMM's side. Happens not to get that roll. And Fiona finishes things off, playing down against this really scary Sylveon to get that nice 1v1 with Rillaboom versus Sylveon and get that win even with the Calm Mind boost. Just brilliantly played.
Yeah, it was brilliant play to just work through the the substitute was a bit of a shock, I think, so Fiona had to work through that in the last minute, but working through everything, getting through the sheer bulk of the team, taking hits of a very fragile team, it was just so many things that went into Fiona's hands, and it was unfortunate to have those critical hits towards the end of the game that made even us think Sylveon could take it all the way to the end, but playing the pace of the end game really nicely. A couple turns where maybe it could have been outright damage, but just trying to think, okay, wood hammer could be a roll, go for the grassy glide, go for the fake out, just to set the pace and be like, okay, damage isn't going to be anything, but having that little bit of chip, just stopping that grassy and trail recovery was something they had in mind for the entire game, and she expedited it amazingly and just got that 2-0 and got the first win of this week on the side of the Arachnids, meaning that the Thunders have less bragging rights going into the top cut.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tokyo Thunders win. It looks like every other match, but Fiona's able to stop the 8-0. And it's a really wonderful mark of a steady player to be in a situation where your team is down so much, where you're in a really tough spot against a Sylveon that has every boost you can imagine, and still to be able to stay calm and say, look, there's still a win condition. I just played to that. Really being carefully and thinking through things, going for that fake out to test how much damage it did, to know if it was safe to go for a wood hammer right away versus going for the grassy glide and surviving the hyper voice. Just a lot of real thought went into that, and a lot of very calm play to be able to handle all of the pressure from the team format and from the situation and be able to just get that win really reflects well on Fiona. So a wonderful game from her, and a wonderful game from YMM, putting her in that tough spot to begin with. That was such brilliant Sylveon play.
Yeah, it was a brilliant play of Sylveon, and I hope we have a brilliant play and display of all the Pokemon we have on the table for us rest this week. Because we have a couple more games, not even a few more games lined up for you this weekend on the Sootopolis City League. And I think we can pass it over to our hosts or our next casters just to, get them to follow on the show and show us what games are to come.